Sharing at a 24/7 prayer conference, it feels intimidating to me. And the reason why is prayer is something that for a very long time, and by a very long time I mean like decades in my life, is a topic that when it comes up, if I'm aware of the feelings that I might be having, and I'm usually not, but if I am aware of the feelings that I'm having, I'm usually filled with feelings of guilt for feeling like this should be way more part of my life, and it doesn't seem to be, and I don't know why I don't want to be doing that more. And that leads to feelings of fear that maybe everybody else is having this experience and I'm missing out on it, but I don't know what it is that I'm missing out on. And then resignation of, well, maybe this is just how it's going to be for me. And I am really excited to be able to share that began to change for me in a really important way about just a year and a half ago. In a year and a half human years, that means I'm like not even a toddler. You know what I'm saying? And this season of spiritual renewal in my life has been marked foremost by a rediscovery of prayer and of the presence of God in a way that I knew about as a set of ideas. And it is becoming a set of experiences for me that is reframing how I see everything. And so I do have some things I want to share about the Bible because, well, I have the mug, you know. But I feel like I need to talk about my experience first and how it's changing the way that I see things that I've known about for a long time. To talk about the season of spiritual renewal in my life, however, instead of to just tell you about it, what I really need to do is to tell you a parable. And the parable is real because it happened to me exactly 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks ago, this day, I was on the north side of Mount Hood. Have y'all seen the big volcano on the eastern horizon here? Yeah, it's not dormant, first of all. Second of all, it's like a smoking sulfur pit up on the top, like it's, so it's just an hour and a half away. But the north side of Mount Hood is one of the most amazing areas in the Cascades, in my humble opinion. It's the most remote. There's no direct roads that go to it. And I set out a month ago, actually yesterday, Thursday, a month ago, for a 3-day solitude and prayer time up on the northern flank of Mount Hood. I've never done anything like that before, but like I said, this is a season of trying new things in my life. And I love to trail run and to backpack and to hike. And so I thought, what if I just was to do that with Jesus for 3 days in one of my favorite places in the Cascades? One of the reasons that I love running and hiking is because I actually really like the experience that's called the runner's high. Do you guys know of this? It's great. So when you push your body in exercise, your body releases all of these like natural chemicals into your body and you feel great. And in my experience, not only do I feel good, but my thinking gets crystal clear. And so what I often do is save up puzzles or ideas that I'm working on for projects, and I'll save them for a run or for a long hike. And so I was so excited because I was like 3 days, like stocking the list of my mental puzzles that I was going to be working on in Bible and theology or whatever. And so I hit the trail at the Vista Ridge trailhead and had about 3 miles to go up a lot of elevation. And so I just like look down, start breathing, go. And I was having a great time looking down. And occasionally I'd look up and it's like there's the volcano right there. And I got about 3/4 of the way to my first trail fork in the road. And I kid you not, my destination to look for campsites for that first night was a place called Eden Park. And you'll understand why that's ironic or meaningful in a minute. So I was on my way to that fork, and all of a sudden, I heard rustling in the bushes. and there's something in the bushes right there, and it's not running away. And that's not a good thing when you're in the backcountry, because if it runs away, it means it can't eat you, right? But if it doesn't run away, it might be one of those things. And so I was kind of like really startled. This all took place in like 2 seconds. And so I was really startled, and then all of a sudden I realized, no, that's a person. Oh, that's a woman, and she's crouching in the bushes. And the next thing that I thought was like, she's going to the bathroom, and I just like came upon her. And you should know, one of actually the wonderful things about backpacking is being able to relieve yourself wherever you want and have stunning views while you do so. And so I was like, okay, well, I've come across a woman going to the bathroom, and I'm just gonna like focus, keep going by. And then she stands up, and she wasn't going to the bathroom. Her mouth was full. And she put out her arms like this, and she just said, look at these huckleberries. They're everywhere. And I looked around, and I was surrounded by the thickest, most dense huckleberry bushes that I've ever seen. And they were loaded with the fattest, purplest huckleberries that I've ever seen. And not just so you'll believe me, I have a picture here, because you really, it was like a you pick blueberry farm situation. You guys know what I'm talking about? And so I'm kind of like, I'm having this, and so she starts talking about, because she's like gathering them into a bag. And so I look down the trail, and as far as I can see down, 2 miles down, all the way up, I have been walking through huckleberries. And then I look up the trail, and as far as I can see, another mile up to the turn, it's just all huckleberries. And so I did the only reasonable thing that you would do, which is to step aside and start shoveling huckleberries into my mouth. And this was with the whole 3 days. There's something about this certain stretch of elevation on the mountain, the time of year, whatever. I mean, a million factors that go into that. And I was able to enjoy huckleberries at every snack, at every meal, especially with breakfast. It turns out that huckleberries keep you very regular, which is great on the trail also. And it was this very powerful experience where I just got to enjoy this free food, free, wild, delicious food that was just there. For the whole of my 3 days, the huckleberries followed me around. So, this was in my first couple hours, and so I had 3 days to kind of ponder the meaning of that experience. And as I did, I really felt like the Spirit was inviting me to see that as a condensed version of the last year and a half in my life. Like I said, I'm a Bible nerd by profession, and I have had the privilege of developing a really developed toolkit for how to hear what God is saying to his people through the scriptures. And it's been the most wonderful privilege to be able to spend my years in school doing that, and now like the hours of my days studying and writing and teaching and thinking. But it did occur to me that I have mostly invested in one part of my body and mind's way of engaging my faith and learning how to hear what God is saying to his people. And that is through texts and through words and through ideas and through my mind. And that's obviously not a bad thing, but it became clear to me that there was a whole realm of experience, whole body experience that is available in the journey of following Jesus that I just really don't know very much about. And this season of spiritual renewal in the last year and a half of my life has been almost exactly like what happened to me on the trail, which is I have been shaped by a set of habits that primarily I engage in texts and meditated and reading on those texts as a way to hear from God. And then all of a sudden, not all of a sudden, over the last few years, I began to really wonder, is this just a set of ideas? Is there like anything more to this? And I'm not sure, probably it was like the COVID period of isolation. It might also be that I'm in my middle 40s, and so But for one reason or another, I just really began to become dissatisfied and sad about this feeling of absence of the presence of God in my life and not knowing what to do. And so I started seeing a spiritual director, and that was really great. And my spiritual director invited me to do something very simple, which is to start beginning every day with a period of silence, a long period of silence, and just holding my hands open and asking God to speak to me, the whole of me, in some way that I could feel or hear or understand that's outside my normal way of engaging with God. And you want to know what happened? Nothing happened. Like for a very long time, nothing happened. But I did start praying with my kids. I have 2 little boys, and they have all kinds of puzzles and challenges and confusions. And so I began to pray with them about like stuff happening with them at school, with their friends, or on the playground, or some kid doesn't like them, or some kid started making fun of them. And so I started praying with my kids about these situations in their lives. And I don't have time to tell you all the stories, but some like really remarkable, cool things happened that like really felt like answers to those prayers. And I was really silly because I felt so shocked, so shocked that this was happening. And I realized I had a choice to make. I could rationalize this away, and the world's kind of a strange place. When you pray, sometimes things kind of work out the way you hope they would. Or I could choose to trust that this was the answer to my silent prayer every morning, that God was beginning to address me through the medium of my relationships and my life, not just my mind. And so that began a whole journey that essentially is what the huckleberry experience was like. God began to bring a number of people into my life. Some of them were very old friendships, like my friend Gerald or my friend Buddy. Some of you, if you're part of Bridgetown, you know Buddy. Some new friendships were brought into my life. Tyler became quickly a good friend when he moved to town. And these were people in my life who, like that woman, just had full mouths, purple stained teeth, telling me the huckleberries are everywhere. And I feel like I'm really beginning to see and to taste the huckleberries. And it is God's gift to me. And I'm really grateful for that. There's more to that story that I could share, but I don't have time. Another thing that happened in the course of that experience was I began to see and understand and experience themes in the Bible that I knew about, but somehow beginning to have experiences of the presence of God in my life in really powerful ways, just transformed how, not just how I understood, but what these themes meant to me. And so that's what I would like to move to now, is, remember, I'm a Bible nerd. But hopefully this will all tie together at the end. What I would like to do is explore a whole set of themes that has become crystal clear to me about how in the biblical story, prayer in the presence of God, in the Garden of Eden, and mountaintops, and heaven, and the temple, and the relationship between heaven and earth are all really about one thing. How you guys doing? I'd like to start by meditating on a well-known moment in Luke's account of Jesus' execution. It's in chapter 23. You'll see it up here. And it's the moment where the thief, or the criminal, says to Jesus, "Jesus, would you remember me when you come into your kingdom?" And Jesus answers him with famous words. "Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now, if you're like me, probably you have, without knowing it, as you read Jesus' phrase there, inserted something like the word heaven in the place of paradise. You're not entirely wrong in doing that, but it's important to notice that what Jesus doesn't say is, "Today you will be with me in heaven." What he says is, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." So here's another interesting thing about that word, is that the English word paradise is rendering the Greek word, Luke wrote his account in Greek, the Greek word paradisos, right? So our English word paradise is not even a translation of paradise, it's just spelling in English letters what the Greek word is. And what's interesting about that Greek word is it's the Greek word for garden. And about 200 years before Jesus, there were a bunch of really, really smart Jewish scholars who were bilingual. They knew Greek and they knew Hebrew and Aramaic, so I guess trilingual. And they rendered the whole of the Hebrew Bible into Greek. And every time they came across the word garden in the Old Testament, they used the word paradisos to render it. The Hebrew word is gan. These words all mean garden. So what Jesus is saying to this criminal as they're like dying is, I'll see you in the garden later today. Now, if you're a Jewish man and you've been raised on the Hebrew Bible and going to synagogue, and you're like as much of like a Bible nerd as Jesus is, he was a lot more than that, but that was one thing he for sure was a Bible nerd too, though he didn't have the mug. I'm sure there's only one garden that he's talking about. Are you with me? There's only one, like when you say garden and you're Jesus in the setting that he is, what you mean is the Garden of Eden. So what on earth would it mean for Jesus to say to somebody, as he's dying, to someone else who's dying, I will meet you in the Garden of Eden later today? What could that possibly mean? Because the reason why there's only one garden that Jesus could be referring to is because it's like the foundation of the biblical story. It's like found on pages 1 and 2 of the beginning of the Hebrew Bible. And if you turn to Genesis 2, you don't have to, you'll see it up here on the screen. Like here's like the first account of the planting and the growing of the Garden of Eden. It's in Genesis chapter 2. And the scene begins with a desolate wasteland, and then God provides this stream of water popping up out of the ground that creates mud. And out of that mud, two things happen. One is God plants a garden where trees are growing everywhere. And then also there's mud, so God forms the human and breathes life into the human. So the garden is a place right there in Genesis chapter 2, a garden in the east. Now, regardless of how you interpret these narratives about Genesis, and you know, Christians love to debate these chapters, don't they? What everybody agrees on is that this is a story that is set in the past. Are you with me? Yeah. It's at the beginning, right? It's in the book called The Beginning. It's in the past. So the Garden of Eden, which is the only garden Jesus could be referring to, is in the book of Genesis in the past, but Jesus seems to imagine that it's the kind of place where you can meet up with somebody later this afternoon when we're both dead. Are you with me? Yes. So I'm trying to create the puzzle for you, right? It's a genuine puzzle. So you could put it this way, it's a very simple way to put the question, when is paradise? Is it in the past, like it is on page 2 of the Bible? Or is it in the future, that is Jesus's and the criminal's immediate future, later this afternoon? That's interesting. And the plot thickens. If you turn from the beginning of the Bible to the very end, like the very opposite end, to the last pages, to the last chapters of the Bible, the garden appears again. In these famous scenes in Revelation chapter 21 and 22, literally the last paragraphs of the New Testament, and John sees two things. He sees a new sky and a new land, because the first land and sky have passed away. There's no longer any sea. And I saw the holy city, the new Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, made ready as a bride, adorned for her husband. So he sees a city descending from the heavens, and then as he goes on, he gets a virtual tour of that city. And then in chapter 22, he just starts describing certain details, and you're like, oh, this is the Garden of Eden. It's the garden city. Yeah? Yeah. There's a river of the water of life coming out of the throne, which is at the center. Oh, and there's the tree of life right there. How you guys doing? So the plot thickens, right? Because this isn't just like the future for Jesus and the criminal like later this afternoon. This is like the future. This is like the cosmic future. So once again, let me ask my question. When is paradise? Is it in the past? Or is it in the future, like Jesus in the criminal's future? Or is it in like the future, which is like the cosmic future? And just to make the puzzle complete, those are not all of your options yet. There is one more. In Paul's, well, it's actually not his second letter, it's his third letter to the Corinthians, but we call it 2 Corinthians. There's people from the UK in the room. None of this 1st or 2nd Corinthians, just 1 and 2 Corinthians, right? Isn't that normal? One. So in 2 Corinthians, anyhow, Paul the Apostle starts talking about this experience that he had in prayer 14 years ago for when he wrote it. And he says, he tells it in a couple ways. He says, first of all, he says, I know this guy in the Messiah, and it's him. He's going to say so in a few sentences. But he says, I know this guy in the Messiah who 14 years ago was caught up to the third heaven. And whether it was in the body, out of the body, not really sure. God knows. But what I know is that this guy, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know, God knows, was caught up to, where was he caught up to? Paradise. Notice how for Paul, heaven and paradise are two ways of talking about the same place. Yeah? Now, even though this event was 14 years in Paul's past, when he had this experience, it was very much not a past experience and not a future experience, but it was paradise now. Yeah? So now the plot really thickens, right? Because, let me ask my question one more time. When is paradise in the Bible? Is it in the past? Is it in the future? Or is it in the future? Or is it in the present? How you guys doing? No, it's a genuine question. Look up the word paradise, and here's what you find. And I hope that you just have a deep, deep instinct that the answer to this question is yes. Yeah? Now, you may not know fully why that's your instinct for saying that, but I think that is what we're supposed to take away from this. Why? Why would I say that? Well, here's something interesting. If you go, we were in the last book of the Bible, at the very last pages, so let's just, you can flip, I'm going to go on a slide, to the first paragraph of the Revelation, and we learn something really important about paradise. We hear an announcement from the Lord God, Revelation chapter 1, verse 8, who says this, I am the Alpha, I'm the Omega, it's the first and last letters of the Greek alphabet. I am the one who is, and who was, and who is to come, the Almighty. I, John, your brother and companion in the suffering and kingdom and patient endurance that are ours in Jesus, was on the island of Patmos because of the word of God and the testimony of Jesus. And on the Lord's day, I was in the Spirit, and, well, you know what happens next if you've ever tried to read the Revelation. He discovers that he is no longer on the island of Patmos. Yeah? He discovers that he's in the heavenly temple. And he meets a human figure who's on fire, dressed like the high priest is in the holy place. And he sees like the 7-lamp menorah lamp, and he sees the smoke and the incense filling the room. But he's not in Jerusalem in the temple. He's in the heavenly temple. And it's Jesus. It's the risen Jesus. And what the risen Jesus starts to say to him is, hey, I need you to write some letters to different churches. And the second church that he writes a letter to is to the church of Ephesus. And what he tells the people of Ephesus is that, man, if you overcome the obstacles that are in your way to following me, you will eat of the tree of life in paradise. When is paradise, my friends? Is it past? Is it present? Is it future? Or is it future? And if the answer to that is yes, then that invokes an even more interesting question, which is, where is paradise? Where is John as he's having that experience? Well, he tells you that he's on an island of Patmos, and then he tells you that he was in the Spirit, and then he starts telling a story about what happened, and he was all of a sudden in heaven, where Jesus is saying it's like paradise up here. How you guys doing? Okay, so something's going on here. Apparently Jesus and Paul and the biblical authors just have a really, really different way of seeing reality than most of us do, and certainly people in our culture. In the Bible, paradise is apparently a symbol, it's an image, and it can be described with lots of different kinds of imagery, like temples or mountaintops or gardens. But it's a way of describing something that is like fundamental to how Jesus and the New Testament authors and the biblical authors saw reality. And that imaginative picture of the world is this. It's that somehow there is a truest, most foundational, most fundamental dimension of reality that is actually like undergirding and making all the rest of reality possible. But that reality is not perceptible to our five senses, and it's actually not perceivable within the four dimensions of reality that we inhabit, right? Height, width, depth, and then time, as we go through those three dimensions. But this is a reality that it's actually not even just that it's real, it's actually more real than anything else. And the reason that it's more real than anything else is because it's not just a place or a time, it's a person. Are you with me? So, because remember what Jesus said. He said, you'll be with me in paradise. And Jesus talks about those who overcome, you'll be with me to eat of the tree of life. So when we're talking about paradise, what we're really talking about is a person who is the eternal now, a person who is the perpetual present. And this is core to how Jesus saw the world. And since I'm a follower of him and I want to become like him, I really want to understand how he saw the world so I can try through habit formation to adopt that way of seeing the world too. And this might seem so basic or 101 to you, maybe, I don't know, maybe you're not even learning anything right now, in which case I'm sorry to insult your intelligence, but I'm learning something right now, so. This is so fundamental. What the biblical authors and what Jesus is trying to describe is that at the center, I can't even use spatial language, right? Because I'm a creature that inhabits four dimensions, right? This is like somebody who lives on a 2D plane trying to imagine what a three-dimensional ball looks like. It's just like it'll always and only ever look like a circle because you're a little 2D. Are you with me? You did that one? Okay, yeah. So it's kind of like that. So this is a view of reality that says there is a beautiful mind and heart at the source of all being and existence. And without that outpouring, others-centered, love-sustaining person, there is not a moment or molecule in our universe that would even exist in the first place. And so you can be in the past, you can be in the present, you can be in the future, or you can be in the future. You can be on a Greek island of Patmos. And all you are is one moment away from seeing the huckleberries. Yeah? So, how you guys doing? The huckleberries are everywhere, my friends. In fact, there's actually never been a moment or molecule that you've ever encountered in your life that doesn't have a huckleberry making its existence possible. Right? Is what I'm trying to say here. How you doing? Okay. This is so interesting to me, I forgot where I was in my notes, so just give me a second. So this also begins to explain another set of features in the biblical story that never made a lot of sense to me until I had the huckleberry experience, which is the answer to the question of where is paradise, which is very similar to the answer to the question of when is paradise. So we know that paradise is at least on a Greek island in Patmos, right? Because you can be there and have this experience. Now, it's supposed not to be a super long talk. So time does not permit me to tell you the story of Jacob in Genesis chapter 28. But if time did permit me to tell you that story, I would tell you a story about how this guy, I'm with you. I'm going to do it. This guy, I was going to do it anyway. I just was. So there's this guy named Jacob And he and his mom just schemed up a plan to lie and cheat their brother and father out of this blessing and this firstborn inheritance. And so he has to flee because his brother said he's going to murder him. It's a good reason to flee your home. And so he leaves where he was, which is a town named Be'er-Sheva, and he's on his way for Haran. It's a few hundred miles, and you have to cross a long, uninhabited, mostly desolate desert region to get there. So he stops at some place. And he has a dream. And actually, this is important because notice when John talked about being in the Spirit, what he's referring to is some mode of consciousness, some state of consciousness where all of a sudden John, on the Greek island of Patmos, could be with the cosmic risen Jesus, traversing the universe in the heavenly temple, while also being on the Greek island of Patmos. Are you guys with me? So isn't it interesting that here's Jacob in some place between Be'er-Sheva and Haran, and he goes to sleep. Notice the altered mode of consciousness is the key here. He goes to sleep, and then he has a dream. And in that dream, he sees like he's in a place where heaven and earth are the same place. They're connected through a bridge. And what he sees is the same thing that John saw, a human figure that he calls Yahweh. And what Yahweh says is, I am with you. Do you remember what Jesus said to the criminal? He said, you'll be with me in paradise. And now here is Yahweh appearing to a guy who just lied and cheated his family and is on the run because his brother wants to kill him. And what Jesus says to this chump is, I am with you. And wherever Yahweh is with you is apparently paradise. Because it's a heaven on, are you with me here? Yeah. And so he wakes up and he's freaked out and he says, this place is the house of God, Bethel. This is the gate of the skies. And what's fascinating about this story is it's not as if Jacob went to a place that he knew was sacred and that somehow made his encounter with God possible. It's exactly the opposite. Are you with me? Yeah, it's his encounter with paradise that makes the space holy. And that's what he does when he offers it. It's really interesting. Now, time also does not permit me to tell a story about Ezekiel. And I will make this one short. Where Ezekiel is exiled in Babylon, sitting in his house with some friends. And all of a sudden, as he's sitting there, the hand of Lord Yahweh comes upon him, which I'm pretty sure what he means is that his consciousness was altered in this very significant way. Because all of a sudden he's looking and he's seeing somebody like what John saw in the heavenly temple and the one that Jacob saw in that field. It's a human figure and they're on fire. Yeah, it's like exactly what John saw. And that person stretched out a hand and grabbed him by the tzitzit of his hair. It's the Hebrew word tzitzit, the lock of your hair. And the spirit, all of a sudden, that person is now the spirit, and I'm being lifted up in between land and sky. What is that? If you are in between land and sky, where are you? Now remember, where is he? He's in a house. And now he's in between land and sky, and he's about to get taken on this virtual tour of Jerusalem, and then he's going to all of a sudden wake up and like he's back there in his house again. So let me ask you the question this way. Where is paradise? Is it on a Greek island, Patmos? Is it some undesignated, we don't know, spot in between Be'er-Sheva and Haran? Or is it in Babylon, right, in some house in a refugee camp? You should know the answer to this question. Yeah? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah. So, really, all humor aside, maybe, do you see how fundamentally different Jesus and biblical authors saw reality than most of us do? And notice that the common denominator in all of these experiences is about people's states of consciousness. Isn't that interesting? So think about what our conscious life is, and I'm not a psychologist, but I know enough to know that there is a mode of conscious awareness where you and I, from our earliest memories, from when we're children, we exist in this very oblivious and innocent state. And as we begin to get hurt and disappointed by friends and families and by the world, because we're outside of Eden and it's just a painful, difficult place out here, all of a sudden we begin to build up shields. We develop coping habits, self-preservation mechanisms, and these become so wired into the physical neuronal pathways in our brain, we'd actually start to imagine the world a certain way, and we don't see the world, we cannot see the world any other way. And this just builds, and this just builds, and this just builds. But there are moments when one Catholic priest, Father Thomas Keating, who I've learned a lot about prayer from, he calls this the ego level consciousness. But there is something that happens when all of our guards are down, and this especially happens when we're asleep. Are you with me? Right? When we're asleep, because you're still conscious, but you're working on your body is working on a different level. It's soul level, it's being level consciousness. And somehow when you're in that vulnerable state, human beings are open to reality in a way that we are fully guarded against when we're in our ego-conscious moments. You guys with me? And all of a sudden I realized, this is what the biblical authors are talking about. They're just using the language and imagery of gardens and clouds and in-between skies. But what they're really trying to tell us is that you and I actually live in a subversion of reality. And that there is a much fuller, deeper, soul level of reality that is surrounding us. In fact, it makes every moment and molecule possible in the first place. Or as the Apostle Paul says to the philosophers in Athens, he says, God is not very far from any one of us. In him, you guys know this line, in him we what? We live, we move, and we have our being. Or as he says in his letter to the Ephesians, he calls God the Father who is over all and through all and in all. And I used to just think that was like rhetorical flourish, but this actually is how they see reality. And for one reason or another, through my habits, through the traditions in which I was raised, and through my own personal choices, I had developed a set of habits for engaging Jesus and engaging my faith, primarily through my conscious mind, And you can make a lot of progress working with your conscious mind. But what became clear to me over the last year and a half, and in that parable that I lived on the north side of Mount Hood, was that I had a completely underdeveloped soul. And that the level of my core being, who I really am in my most vulnerable state, I'm just a baby when it comes to that. And beginning to relate to God on that deep level, and on the level of reality that is the most true version of reality that makes our four dimensions possible in the first place, all of a sudden I realized, I think that's what prayer is. I think that's what prayer is about. Are you with me? And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, God, I want a lot of that. I want to eat a lot of huckleberries, if you know what I'm saying. And so I just have one more last story to show you, and then I'll conclude. And this is significant, and there's so many elements of this story that I'm sure you know the story. It's in Luke chapter 9. It's a story about one time when Jesus, who was in a habit of going up to high places to pray, all through the night. And we're told that Jesus took Peter and John and James with him up onto a mountain. To do what? To pray. Now, as he was praying, just guess what he started looking like in the eyes of the three who were there. He looked like that guy that Jacob met, and that guy that Ezekiel met, and that guy that John will meet. His appearance of his face changed, his clothes became as bright as a flash of lightning, and then all of a sudden, Moses and Elijah are there, appearing in glorious splendor too. They're talking with Jesus, speaking about the Exodus that he was about to fulfill in Jerusalem. And then, where are they? Where are they right now? Remember? They're on a mountain, but then what comes? So now they're in heaven, So then they're in heaven, and they enter into this cloud, and they hear a voice, and what that voice says is it speaks the true identity of Jesus. Right? Because as they're cruising like down in Galilee or down in Judea, all of these people have opinions about Jesus. He's a great rabbi. He's a prophet. He's John the Baptist come from the dead. Right? All these people have ways of framing who Jesus is. And then somehow they go up into this mountain with Jesus, and it's as if like the veil is opened up. And this becomes a heaven on earth spot. And in those heaven and earth spots, notice how in every one of those stories that I showed you, what is happening is people getting not just a true vision of reality, what they get is they see a person. Like they meet the person who is reality. They meet the eternal now and the perpetual present. What prayer apparently is a way of engaging your whole person and surrendering the ways that we manipulate and distort reality in our consciousness, and just surrendering our whole being to the eternal now. And the eternal now is not just an energy, and it's not just a force, it's a person. It's a beautiful, beautiful mind who, when that mind wanted to communicate the essence of that mind's very being, that mind became a human and poured out his entire life in an act of self-giving love. And that is the eternal now that we have the privilege of connecting to through prayer. And somehow I just these pieces were never put together for me, which is why I felt fear and resignation and guilt. But as this became not just a set of ideas to me, but a set of experiences, is just changing how I see everything. And I think the goal of living in this story and of forming new habits of body and soul and mind and heart is to actually believe and exist in the world as if this is really true. Which means that there is not a place that I can go, and there is not a moment of my existence where the eternal now is not present, and where paradise is not present. Now, of course, not every day. We are not in the Garden of Eden, folks. Let me just make that very clear. So I'm dying, yeah? And so are you. But what is death within this story? Or you get with me? What's death? Death is nothing to the one who holds the keys, yeah, of the grave. And so I think this in fact is the key that all of those earliest Christians had when they would look at death in the lion's face, in the Roman arenas, or being executed, or being crucified like many of the apostles were. What is that? I'll be with you in paradise later today. And what is today when you have to go to work and face that boss that you cannot stand and who keeps withholding that promotion from you because he knows that you follow Jesus and he thinks you're crazy? What's that? Today, you can be with me in paradise. Are you with me? Thank you. I'm really feeling this inspiration coming over this Now, maybe not in this room, but I know that in many, especially Western, Protestant, conservative environments, when you start talking this way, people can get twitchy. And when you start talking about elevated levels of consciousness, right, and experiencing the mystical presence of God. But first of all, let me just respond in as hopefully non-snarky a way as I can. For someone who's like, this sounds like Eastern mysticism or something like that, let us just remember, where did the Jesus movement originate? It originated in the East. And I really don't think Jesus was just reciting Bible verses all night long, like on the mountain. I'm sure that he was reciting whole psalms, and that those psalms were sending his consciousness traversing the universe with his Father in prayer. Are you with me? And whatever it is that happened in the upper room on Pentecost, it wasn't a Bible study. You know what I'm saying? And remember, I'm a Bible nerd. I have the mug. So This isn't like, it's not an either or. It's very much a both and. So let me conclude by saying this. If this is not what prayer and liturgy and worship is as an individual's life and in our communal lives, it seems to me that we have some reevaluating to do. And I'm not trying to say that mountaintop apocalypse moments are like the norm in every day. Remember, Paul did say this was 14 years ago, assuming like this isn't an everyday. But my hunch, my deep, deep hunch, is there are a lot more huckleberries around than you and I assume. Are you with me? And if that's what prayer and liturgy and worship is, alone and together, then I want to see more huckleberries, and I want to experience them with my whole self. Come, merciful Father. Come, Lord Jesus. Come, Holy Spirit. Help us to see reality as it truly is, which is you. We want to enter union with you and to know your love and your mercy. We want everyone around us to begin to taste just a bit of paradise now. We want to taste paradise now. Have mercy on us. Amen.
I'm not going to ask any questions, but let's stay standing. It's not because of the time. It's because sometimes someone teaches, sometimes someone teaches, and it unlocks our understanding, and we should interact with it that way. Other times someone teaches, and it's deep calling to deep. And we should interact with it that way. And what Tim, the gift he gave us, is he just popped out of the bushes. And he said, there's huckleberries everywhere. And I was just weeping the whole time he was teaching. Because I so badly want to live in paradise. I so badly want to live there. I'm sorry. And because I've tasted the huckleberries. So, if you have that going on in you too, potentially less emotionally than I do, but you just open your hands to receive. And I just invite you in this moment to begin seeing the environments of your ordinary life, the home that you live in, the place that you work, the commute between the two, the places you normally go. Just see them imaginatively filled with huckleberry bushes.